Alright, so for today's lab practical, we are going to be preparing a Monte Cristo with a blackberry compote. For the Monte Cristo, it's kind of a really interesting sandwich. It might not be typical to what you've tried, but hopefully you guys will give it a chance and really enjoy it. I'm going to start with 3 pieces of bread per person. Now, I'm only going to be making 1 sandwich, but between you and your partner, you guys will be making 2. So on these first 2 pieces of bread, I'm going to go ahead and give it a nice thin layer of mayonnaise. And this is just really some moisture to the sandwich. It does give it a little bit of flavor, but I don't want to overpower by putting on so much mayonnaise. It completely changes the flavor of the actual sandwich. So a nice thin layer on both sides of that bread. And then on top of this, I'm actually going to be adding a Gouda cheese, which is a little bit of a fancier cheese. It has a really interesting flavor, not just your typical cheddar. And hopefully that'll give it something a little bit different than what you guys have typically tried. Set my mayonnaise aside, and then I've got my Gouda cheese here. I'm going to put 1 slice on top of each piece of bread. And then I'm also going to put 1 slice of turkey on top of each slice of bread. And this is a shredded turkey, so a little piece here on this side, and then a little piece on this. Now in the middle of this, I'm actually going to take 1 more piece of bread and stick it, and I'm going to be making basically a double-decker sandwich, which is what I've got here. Okay. So from here, I'm going to squish this down because I want to make sure it's nice and thin, and that'll really hold everything together. And then we're going to turn it into basically a French toast. So I'll show you guys what that looks like. Alright, so I've got my sandwich here. I've actually cut off 3 sides of my crust, and I'm going to cut off the last side here. I'm just staying as close to the edge as I possibly can because I definitely want to make sure I'm saving all of my sandwich. I'm going to put this right on a piece of plastic wrap, and then I'm going to use a rolling pin to squish it down nice and flat. Now I'm doing this gently, I'm not pushing really hard. I want the rolling pin to kind of do the work. And I'm just going to be squishing it down, trying to make sure that it is staying as close to a sandwich as possible. As it gets close, I'm going to wrap it in the plastic wrap, and then I'm going to continue to press it down nice and flat. That plastic wrap is going to make it so that I'm not moving the sandwich as much or the bread as much with the rolling pin, and it's going to kind of keep it in place. I'm going to flip it over and do it on the other side. And that's about as flat as it's going to get. We're going to wrap this up and store it until tomorrow. Alright, so we're still on day 1. I went ahead and wrapped my sandwich and set that aside, and now I'm going to make my blackberry compote. The reason why we're making this on day 1 is so that it can cool, and we'll use that as a topping on our sandwich tomorrow when we go ahead and grill it all up. So what I'm going to put in my pot here is I've got a little bit of lemon juice, some granulated sugar, I've got my lemon zest, and then of course my blackberries. I'm going to cook this over a medium to low heat for a couple minutes just to make sure that my berries start to burst, and when I see that, it's going to start to thicken up a little bit, and I'm just going to be using a rubber spatula to kind of stir this all around, and we'll show you what it looks like when our berries start to burst. Alright, so if you guys go ahead and look in here, you can see all of my berries have burst, and it's really thickened up quite a bit too. So that's how I know that it is done. I'm going to put this in a baggie and store it until tomorrow. So we are on day 2 of our Monte Cristo sandwich. We made the blackberry compote yesterday, so we're going to save that until the very end. But I've got my sandwich here. While I unwrap this in my bowl, I have a egg mixture with a little bit of milk, and I went ahead and whisked that all together. And I'm going to take my sandwich that is nice and squished down and just dunk it into that mixture. And I'm ready to put this into my frying pan. Now in my frying pan, I melted just a little bit of butter with a little bit of oil, and that's going to help give it a nice golden color as well as a little bit of flavor. We want to make sure while we're letting this cook that we're not flipping it too early. If we flip it too early, it's actually going to tear apart the bread on the bottom. So we want to make sure that we're looking for that bottom edge to get nice and golden brown. That's going to tell us that it's ready to flip over, and I'll show you guys what that looks like. I want to make sure you guys can see this. If you look at the bottom part of the bread here, and on all sides you can see the golden brown, that's telling me that my underneath is ready to be flipped, and I have not touched it since I put it on the pan. But when I go and flip this over, you'll see it's nice and golden brown. So we're going to let this cook on the other side. We'll get all the edges, and then we'll be good to go. So I've grilled both sides, and I've actually already done 3 of the sides. I'm going to show you I've been using 2 utensils here to just kind of hold it so that the sides can get nice and grilled as well, because I want to make sure all that cheese and all that bread is nice and toasted. Once I've left it on here for a couple seconds, I'm done, and I'm ready to go ahead and put that onto my plate, add my blackberry compote, and present. And we'll show you what that looks like. Alright, so I finished grilling up my sandwich. much. I've also sliced some oranges and some strawberry slices as a little bit of garnish. We're ready to add our blackberry compote from yesterday that we made, and I'm just gonna put this right on top. Not only does this add a really sweet flavor to it, it also is just really, really pretty. And you'll see that it's nice and thick, it's not running down the sides. I'm gonna add this in, and then I'm gonna go ahead and garnish with a couple pieces of orange slice and a strawberry slice. And it is done. And there's your Monte Cristo. Enjoy.